I was 47 years old and I had been on fentanyl, a very high dose of fentanyl, for 4 years. I became ill with Lyme disease, but it was undiagnosed until long after my NDE. The doctors misdiagnosed me with many things, as you can imagine: ankylosing spondylitis, multiple sclerosis, lupus. I mean, they tried everything, considered everything, and had me on many medications that were non-narcotic and opioids, which I refused for 8 years, 8 to 9 years. In the 9th year, the doctor said, we're going to stop looking for the cause of your profound pain, and we're just going to give you fentanyl. You have no other options. And so after 4 years on fentanyl, my brain forgot to tell my lungs to breathe in the middle of the night. And that's what brought on the NDE. I was lying in bed. It was just after midnight, the morning of my 47th birthday, September 4th, 2013. And the headboard was against the wall. So much like I'm sitting here against the wall, my head was against the wall, against a headboard. I was lying flat, and I felt someone's hands at my shoulders, and I could feel their fingernails digging into my trapezius muscles. And it felt also as if there was someone at my feet. For a moment I thought it might be a snake crawling across my ankles, but I realized it was both forearms of a being. I would like to think it was an angelic being, I can't say, but the forearms were lying across my ankles. I was immediately propelled into a white space. No ceiling, no floor, just a giant white space. And there was a tree, a very large, deciduous tree. It looked very healthy, full of leaves, green leaves, and a man walking toward me that looked very much like Jesus. I thought to myself, well, if Jesus is here, I must be dead. And it makes sense. I was on such high doses of opioids. Of course, I've had an overdose. So I was pretty resigned that here I was standing in front of Jesus. Although I can honestly say I never expected to be standing in front of Jesus. He reached out his hand and he grabbed my hand and said to me, "You've suffered enough. Come with me, your life is over." And I immediately pulled my hand back from his, and I thought the most ironic thing that I've ever thought in my entire life. But who will take care of my husband if I leave? By then my husband was caring for me and taking care of the house and working a full-time job, and I was, for all intents and purposes, bedridden. So that was the most ironic thing I could have said. I also had a sense that it was my choice, that it was my choice if I stayed in my life or if I went with him. And in the moment that I realized that, I heard a commotion behind me, and I turned around, and it was the donkeys and horses from a sanctuary where I had volunteered prior to this experience. I was previously a horse owner and rescued and rehabbed performance horses and race horses, and when I could no longer care for my own horses and one was adopted out and one was placed in a sanctuary, I then volunteered in that sanctuary for over a year, grooming donkeys and horses with what little energy I had, and I would return home to bed. So it didn't surprise me that the donkeys and horses were there braying and screaming. The horses had reared up on their hind legs, flailing their front hooves in the air, screaming as if to say, "Don't you remember?" And I was back in my body. And for a moment, a vision of the Joan of Arc archetype lingered in the air above me. It was a single picture frame of what seemed to me to be a woman on a horse in medieval times, and she was just staring at me down in the bed. And I didn't realize what that meant at the time, or even, to be honest, what that was. I had no context. After the 2 or 3 seconds that archetype lingered in the air, I took the deepest breath you can imagine, and I shot straight up, which I hadn't done in years. In order to get out of bed, I would have to roll myself onto the floor and push myself up with my knees and my hands on the bed in order to stand. I shot straight up and I began screaming, as they say, at the top of my lungs. I just died, I just died, I just died, over and over and over again, screaming. My lungs were on fire, and my heart ached as if my husband, a 200-pound man or more, was sitting on my chest. It was clear to me that there had been no oxygen in my lungs and my heart had stopped. My lungs were on fire. There is no other way to describe it. And my heart had stopped. And my husband frantically woke up. Oh my gosh, are you okay? What's wrong? And I said, I just died. And my husband, he's on the autism spectrum, what they used to call Asperger's. So he said, well, if you're okay now, can we talk about it in the morning? And I said, sure, honey, because that's the only way to respond to someone who doesn't have very active mirror neurons. And I laid there awake all night, waiting for him to wake up and have his coffee so that I could tell him that I didn't want to die, that I wanted to live. And we spoke the next morning, and I sat in front of him on the floor with my hands on his knees, and I explained what happened. And I said, this medicine is going to kill me, and I don't want to die. I'm not ready to die. I said, I don't know what it is, but I have something important to do. I have no idea what that might be, but I can't die now. And like many people who have an NDE, my husband and I both thought I was crazy because I came back with some pretty remarkable gifts. And again, like many people who have had NDEs, I thought I was the only one this must have happened to because I had never heard it before. And again, like many people who've had NDEs, I went on a spiritual quest. And I bought books, and I went to Uluru in Australia, and I worked with a shaman from Brazil, and I sought out Native American and indigenous masters and teachers and shamanic teaching and many different healing modalities. And in the beginning, I just laid on anyone's table that would see me for $500, and I just, heal me, I'm ready to heal me, I don't want to die. And it took a few years for me to learn that true healing comes from within. No one truly has the power to heal you. The NDE compelled me to heal. Touching Jesus' hand, coming back with that high vibration of Christ energy, being completely incompatible with everything I was, compelled me to fast track a healing. Over 6 years, 7 days a week, I didn't take a break. I went from seminar to workshop to 7-week class, 7-day class to 2-week class, from the cruise ship to the classroom to the downloading the webinar to reading the book. I've done a lot, and I've amassed a tremendous amount of knowledge in these past 6 years. And for me, what has worked has been forgiveness and love and going inside and taking responsibility for my own healing, my own actions, keeping track of my thoughts. And if there's a thought in there that I don't consciously agree with or particularly like, I I track down the source of it. What happened to me in my life that made me think that way? Or might create a thought form that it's not really a thought. It's a thought form. It's an energy pattern that exists that wants to trick me into believing I still think or feel that way. And that's how I work. That's how I've helped myself, and that's how I help people, and that's how I help animals as well.